My name is John Cornicello, and I welcome you to my series of live interactive photo conversations. Check the schedule at cornicello.com conversations for dates and times of upcoming shows. Today, my guest is Jack Reznicki. Jack's an internationally renowned commercial photographer doing people and children work based in New York City, and is the author of several books on commercial photography, including The Copyright Zone, which deals with copyright and legal issues for photographers and artists, which works out nicely with today's topic of how and why to register your copyright. Please welcome Jack Reznicki.
Welcome.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. I'm going to do a quick 5 minutes on why to register. Some of the issues about copyright. It's going to be really quick because we've gone over this in a previous video on John's site, and then I'll go into step by step how to register and some of the issues with that. So I'm going to go right into sharing my screen and share copyright registration. Okay, just as a overview again, in copyright we have something known as our bundle of rights. That's the legal rights that we have under copyright. We have an exclusive right, which is also the bundle of exclusive rights are the same thing. It gives you, the owner, the right to control your property and prevent others from exercising control over your property. These are the rights you get from copyright. You have the right of reproduction, the right of derivatives, and I think we went deep into that last time I was here, John, on derivatives, because that takes up a lot of time. Distribution, how the work's distributed. Performance doesn't affect us, that's for the performing arts. And display, which does affect us. How your work is being displayed is one of the exclusive rights you have under copyright. So copyright exists from the moment the work's created. The moment you snap the shutter, you own the copyright. But as we're going to find out here in this, it's worth a bucket of spit without registration. And that's a quote by me. You'll find out that without registering your copyright here in the US, there's really not much you can do with it. So copyright registration, what do you get? How important is it? Well, the biggest thing about it, first and foremost, is the ability to file a lawsuit. Without a registration in hand, and this is a case that the Supreme Court just ruled on this past summer, without the registration certificate in hand, you can't even file the lawsuit. And a lot of people know that. And that includes this new CASE Act that passed, which is a Small Claims Bureau or process. It's not a small claims court. We can talk about that at the end of this if people have questions. It's not a court, so no, they can't force you into it. If you decline to get involved in it as a defendant, then there's no penalty for that. But even for the CASE Act, to enter that, you still need a registration. Without the registration, there's like nothing you can do with the copyright. That's the whole point of registering your images. Also, you can get compensatory damages or statutory damages. I'm not going to go into the difference. You can also, if you have a timely registration, you registered before the infringement, you can recover your lawyer fees. And you can get an injunction. If it's produced on boxes or on t-shirts or something, you can get an injunction to remove it from commerce. And it also acts as prima facie evidence, meaning evidence that it is your picture and you own it. One of the interesting things is a lot of other countries do not require registration, although that's slowly starting to change in some countries. But countries that our laws will not affect, they will accept a US registration, copyright registration, as prima facie evidence in their court that it's your photograph. We move on. Now, without a registration, basically, people that you infringe, the ones that are sophisticated and knowledgeable, they know they can just ignore you. You know, you write them a letter or you complain or you bitch and moan, I have the copyright, you know, you can't do this. They can just ignore you and not do a thing, because unless you can file a suit without that threat, there's absolutely nothing you can do. They can just tell you to go pound sand, basically. So infringement categories, I'm not going to go over this. it gives you the right, if you've timely registered, the choice to elect the award one or more of the following ways. It's direct, contributory, vicarious, or induced infringements. But this is something to really go over with a lawyer. We're not going to go into that deeply. So copyright registration, where do you go to register? The easiest place to start is www.copyright.gov, not copyright.com. That's a commercial site. That's just going to try and get money from you. You need to go to the government site, copyright.gov. When is the effective date? The effective date is the date the Copyright Office receives all the required elements in acceptable form, regardless of how long it takes to process the application and mail you the certificate of registration. The effective date is the date that you finish uploading everything. I'll show you just where that is. And it's just filling out the form, paying the fee for it, and uploading a zip file of JPEGs. The date you do all of that, that's your effective date. It could take anything from 3 months, 6 months to a year to get the certificate of registration. And this is what it's going to look like. It's changed a little bit now that each and every file is now listed in the registration. And I think I highlighted, you can see it has an effective date of the registration. That was the date that I filed everything for this one. And you can see there's 6 pages to this registration. It used to be one simple page I'd sent you, that was it. Now I'm getting multiple pages from them every time because I'm registering the maximum number, which is 750 images on each registration. This is what you need to register. You need the images, small JPEGs. And small, I mean, I usually do like 600 to 800 pixels on the longest side, compressed to like a 5 or 6 compression. It doesn't have to be big, and you don't want them big because it goes into public record. So I want very small JPEGs. They just have to be big enough that I could project them and show them if I have to sue somebody, that we can see what the image is. That's it. The registration form filled out and payment. That's about it. But there is one more form that they require, which I'm going to go over quite a bit. So send in small JPEGs, and it has to go into a zipped folder. You have to compress and zip the folders of your JPEGs. You also want to end up, when you go to copyright.gov, you want to go to the Electronic Copyright Office. It's small e, capital CO, Electronic Copyright Office. And at this point, we'll see if we can get somebody to mute. I'm going to jump into, whoops, let me stop share for a second so I can get, just to show you this copyright. Hang on one second. Copyright.gov. I didn't set this up. Okay, yeah, it's telling me my session's over. I forgot about that. So back to Zoom. Let me get this up. Share screen. Okay. Okay, so there's the Copyright Office website when you get into it. They have a lot of really good things here. What did I want to go over? You can download what's known as a compendium, which is like 1,000 pages of all the requirements in copyright if you want to go over that. It's good to have the compendium. It does clarify some things, but they have many different ways to get information at the Copyright Office. And you can search copyright records, copyright law, fees, but what you want is this, register your works, right in the middle. And when you click on that, there we go. Why are you not going anywhere? Okay, you'll go to this page, and they're going to give you some notices. Important note, registering a group of unpublished works. Now, every time you see the word works, they're not referring to photographs. They're referring to artwork. So if you're an illustrator and you're creating paintings or artworks or drawings, you can only register 10 works on each registration. For photos, you can register up to 750 on one application. And the application's the same price if you're going to register 2 images or 750 or anything in between. If you're only going to do 1, then it's a $45 charge instead of $55. But what you want to find is this: log into the Electronic Copyright Office Echo registration system, and I timed out. When you get that, this is the window that'll come up if you've registered. What I'm going to do now is go into my Keynote. I think from this point on, I'm pretty well done with that. Okay. I get to the top of this, and this will be the step-by-step of that. Okay, get it in the center. Okay, so this is the Electronic Copyright Office step-by-step. So again, this will be the first screen you see. If you don't have an ID and password, then you go down here where it says if you are a new user, click here to register. I will tell you, they make you redo your password every 90 days. They'll send you a notice about it, but they won't let you keep the same password forever. So if you didn't change it and it's been a while before you get on, you just have to go forgot your password, do that and reset it. And it's pretty simple to do, but every 90 days it has to be changed. And they have all their notices and whatever. So you log in, and you'll go to this page and it'll tell you welcome, which is really nice. You'll get all of these things on the left where you can look at your open cases, your working cases, the status, which doesn't ever tell you anything. But you don't want to go to register a work, standard application. If you do, and a lot of people have, they find out months later that the application's been rejected. What you want to do, oops, shoot. Let me see if I'm clicking it just too fast. Give me one sec. You want to go here, and I'm highlighting it where it says register a group of photos. You don't want to go into works. You don't want to do anything else. This is the only one that you really want to click, assuming that you're going to do a group of photos rather than one photo. If you're going to do one photo, you don't go to standard application. 2 down below that, it says register one work by one author. That would be the one if you want to do, you have some historic photo and you want to get that one done, that's where you would go. But generally, 99% of the time, I'm going to assume you're going to register a group of photos. And when you click on that, you'll get here and you will start the registration. You'll see the button up on top for start registration. It's just telling you the eligibility. It's a group of published photos or a group of unpublished photos. We're going to go over basically unpublished photos because I recommend that you do that. It's easier. It's more restrictive to do published photos and is quite a pain. But it's necessary. I know a lot of people I've been helping out have photos from like the 70s and 80s that were published in magazines and newspapers, and they're trying to get it registered now, which you can do. You can register at any point, published or unpublished images. I've been registering a lot of my old black and whites from the 70s lately. So when you continue, you'll get to this screen, and it'll ask you what type you're doing. And this is your choices, published or unpublished. There's unpublished. And also, anytime you see these little red asterisks, odds are you have to fill it out. In this case, it just says you're agreeing that you've read everything and you understand and meet the eligibility requirements. Say that 5 times fast. Which is basically that you know that you got to send in just JPEGs or TIFFs, whatever it is, and that you got to, you're the there's a single author for what you're registering. In other words, you can't mix up different things. Like if somebody's shooting BTS photos during your shoot, unless you're a full-time employee, you're going to have a problem registering under one registration. You're gonna have to do separate registrations. When you click and agree on it, this is what'll come up. It'll just tell you, these are the requirements that all the pictures in Unpublished or Unpublished, they were created by the same author and are owned by the same copyright claimant, which hopefully is you. I have filled things out for other people, and they're the one author and they are the single claimant, but somebody can fill it out. I recommend don't pay anybody to do this unless you've got some real problems, but they're really easy to do. You should do it yourself. I think I have some arrows here. Let me just see what I did. Yeah, so this is what I just went over, those three things. Also, submit everything either as a JPEG, a GIF, or a TIFF, and do not upload your photos one by one. They strongly encourage you, they put it in red, to put it in a folder and zip it. Now, this is the thing right here, this template, this title template. They hide it here and it's hard to find anywhere else, but you want to go there and download the template. If you have unpublished photos listed, it's going to give you the unpublished template. If you've clicked published, it's going to give you the published template. And this is what the templates look like. This is the one for unpublished. And it's pretty simple. This is the one for published. And I'll go over all of this as we get further in. But the only difference between the two is in publish, it's required to give them the month and the year of publication. And you have to group it that way. You have to group the months together. So if you have 3 in January and 5 in April, you have to separate those out in those groupings, because when you enter in the titles, you have to do it by the month, the months together. So what else did I have here? Okay, this is the blank. There's 2 columns you have to fill out, basically, and this is a filled out one. The first column is the title of the photos, and I have to do that in text edit on my Mac, where I can grab the titles. I can't do it in Word. I can't do it in Notes. I have to do it in whatever I just said, text, Word text. And it's in your Mac if you're on a Mac. PC, it's done differently, but you want to grab the titles, just copy and paste them into this. And then I have my file name is the same as the title of my photo. I don't change it. If you're one of those people who titles your photos, you can give them the title and then tell them what the file name is. When you fill out the file name in that column there, it'll automatically place it into this column and put a comma after each and every file name. And that's important for later. This way you don't have to do it. And if you're missing any information, it'll tell you in the other column, you forgot to put in the file names or the title, but it'll fill this out automatically. The other thing is you have to put the case number here, and I'll show you where the case number is. But before you finish, make sure that you insert the case number there. That's required. I should have it right here. There's the case number. It shows up on, once you open up a registration, it shows up on like every page. So that's the case number for your application. And just hit the continue. Do not use the forward and back buttons on your browser. You have to use their basically forward and back button, which is continue and back. So this will be the first page after you do tell them that what you're doing published or unpublished and you're okaying it. You click continue, this page will come up. And what this page is over here on the left, this tells you all the pages that you're going to go through, and every time you complete it, it'll automatically put in a check mark. So the little red arrow there will tell you where you are. So now we're in titles. And in titles, what I'm going to do is hit the new button. And with new, this will come up. This page and this titles page is where I spend the most time. This is the one thing that they've changed from the past a little bit. With those templates, and it is basically a pain in the ass. But it's required. And what they want you to do is to list each file name going in. And the reason is they've had court cases where people have like 2 or 3 images infringed, and they're saying, well, it's under just one registration, so it's only one infringement. So the requirement now is strongly suggested that you put in each file name into this. And this will take up the most amount of time in the whole registration. So what you're going to do is you got to title your group, and you can call it anything. The title, you can call your collection Fred. What I do is I always do it by the year, which quarter in the year. So I did 2021 first quarter, and then a couple initials to tell me what I'm doing. This is scans from high school is actually what I'm doing here. The year of completion, when is the last one shot? And I know it can't be past 1976, so I put in 1976. I did this once with a whole bunch of different years, which you can do with Unpublished. My lawyer hates it. He said, don't do that, but I have a mess of old files. I don't know when they were shot. I have to put a year of completion. So what I did for one of them once is I put in something that I shot this year. And so year of completion was, in that case, 2020, because that was the last shot taken was that year, even though it went all the way back into the 70s. So you put in the year of completion. Again, these are little red dots, so you have to do it. And you select how many images are you registering. And I'm going to register 750. That's the max allowed. Again, it costs you the same to register 2 images or 750. It's not by the image, it's by the registration. We get that question a lot. And then you hit the save button. When you hit the save button, this will come up and you'll see what you just put in here in the titles. Now, what they don't tell you sometimes is what you have to do now is hit the new button again. But before you do, you're going to go back to the template. And in the template, right here in this column, you're going to grab, copy, and paste a whole bunch of these titles. That's why they put the comma in. It's required for the title page. So you're going to copy and paste from this Excel sheet that they gave you, all of these, and you're going to put them into the titles box. The first time you put it in, actually, it'll be one column. But then when you go up to select, it'll form out like this. Now, you see here, it says it only allows 1,995 characters, including spaces in between. How do you count that? You don't. What you do is you just grab a whole mess of files, and I'll usually grab 100 or more. Depending on the length of your title, what you'll do is you'll say, okay, I grabbed 100, I'm going to put it in, and I'm going to go to the number of photos screen right here. And when you enter that in, you'll get another screen that says you went over the number of characters allowed. Fine. Then you'll go down here and see where the last file name is and see if it's the entire name. Does it end in JPEG, or is it partial? If it's partial, you erase it up to the next full file name and figure out, going back to the sheet, you figure out how many that is, and then you enter that into the other box of how many titles are there. This is a huge pain in the ass. Mr. Newler, you got 2 fingers up. Usually you only have 1 finger up for me. What are the 2 fingers for?
So can't you take all those numbers for each of the files and put it into Word and ask?
No, do not.
Well,
No.
Just
I'll tell you why. Do not use Word, because Word puts in other characters that you can't see.
No, hold on. Just to have Word add up the number of characters you've got.
No. It's a waste of time. This will do it for you automatically, and it'll tell you where you are. You're doing double work if you do that. I did this one. I did 100. It accepted 100. I said, great. 100 is easy to do. I'm going to keep it at that. Sometimes it ends up at like 93 or 94. So I just keep repeating that number over and over again on my titles. It'll depend on the length of your title.
Okay.
This will do it for you automatically. So don't bother doing it in Word. So anyway, so I fill that out and then you hit save and then it'll show up here. And if you can see, it has all the titles here somewhere. It says 100 images. Now you hit new again. You keep hitting new till you get it all in there. So again, go back to the spreadsheet, grab a bunch of these. Oops, internet is unstable. You guys can still see me.
Yeah, you're good.
No.
Yeah,
When
your
you're
voice
the
is breaking up a little
sheet-
bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll speak slower. Maybe that'll help. When you grab a bunch of the file names, you count bottom Excel. That's how you know how many you grabbed. Otherwise, figure out how many because of this. It me nuts. Knowing that the there made it a lot easier. You grab that, put them in again, tell them how many you got. When you're done, this is what it should look like. You'll be able to look over here, all these numbers, that add to 100.
You're still breaking up a
number you
bit.
have. Okay. I don't know what to do about that. That's connect. Is this understandable? Those other
Yeah, I think we get the gist of it.
Okay, has to add 750. Then you hit continue. If you look left, titles is oh, that was the hard of author. Who is the author? Who's the photographer? Who shot these images? You could fill it out, but after you've done this once, you should be able to go here where it says add me. I don't fill each page out. I just keep doing add me because I'm the claimant, I'm the photographer, I'm the correspondent, I'm everything. So hit the add me button. Most of the time, it'll fill it in automatically. You do not, by the way, have to be a citizen or live in the United States to register your images. I know a lot of people in other countries who do register their images here because if the work is shown here or the company is based here, they can sue in the US and the settlements and the damages are much higher here in the US. So now we're on claimants. Again, I just go to the add me button or new if it's something new. I'll go to add me and add me will automatically fill this out. I'm blacked out certain personal information because this is on Zoom and you're recording this, John. So I just didn't want it going out there. So you'll see these little green bars where I've blanked, but this is all you need. For some reason, when it fills everything out automatically, it never puts in country. So I always have to go in manually and put in the country for whatever reason. Then go in, hit save, and move on to the next screen. It's pretty quick. I'm the author. I'm the claimant. I am claiming the copyright to this. So that was the last one. Let me back up. You can see it fills it out here at the bottom, you know, what you did. So you can just take a quick look to make sure it was done correctly. Move on to rights and permissions. Again, it's another add me button for me. It'll fill this out automatically. Goes very quick. Correspondent. This is important. If they have a problem, who do they contact? Did somebody else do this for you and you want them contacted, or do you want to be contacted? I have had issues sometimes where they do want to contact me, and they're very nice. It's one bureau of the government that seems to have really nice people in it and are very helpful most of the time. So I put in all my contact information if they need to reach me about the registration. Next is mail the certificate. Where does the certificate get mailed to? If you're out of the country, it's usually, I prefer that somebody collects it here. I did something for somebody in Ireland a while back, and we had it sent to his lawyer. So this could be somebody else. Where do you want it mailed? Again, for me, it's add me, so all of my stuff comes up. Special handling. When you see special handling, skip it, or you're going to pay $800 above the $55. And if you look over on the left, it'll tell you you need a compelling reason why you want this expedited. Expedited used to be 24 to 48 hours. Now it can take up to 30 days to get it. Because of COVID and other reasons, but it's because of, as you can see, pending litigation, custom matters, all those things. And you have to explain to them why you want it expedited. They won't do it just automatically. You have to give the explanation. A lot of time, pending litigation, you want to sue somebody, that could be a reason to try and get this quickly. So this one, you just skip. Don't do anything. Just hit continue. Next is certification. You'll see there's a bunch of red asterisks, so you have to fill that out. The confusing one is this one, file name required. So whatever you titled your files, and by the way, I have my folders listed the same way as my title. That in this case, 2021, underline first quarter, underline IHS, underline scans. So that's the title. And they don't tell you, unless you read the fine print, they also want the case number. So again, the case number is up here on top. Just copy and paste that in. But under file name required, put in the case number. I don't know why they don't say that, but that's it. If you want an internal tracking number, I don't need one. If there's a note to the Copyright Office because there's a problem or issue or something you want to explain to them, this is where you would do it. So this is the certification. You certified it. Oops, yeah, the case number. I just want to make sure you got that. And so this is you can review your submission, and everything you filled out will be here. You scroll down, it goes down usually for about 2 or 3 screens. Check everything out, make sure it's correct, and then go back up here and you go to add to your cart. You're going to add this registration to your cart, and this will come up again with all the information. And you can see now it tells you fee due $55. There's the title of my group, everything else. And you can see I just did this yesterday. Now you're going to go to checkout. Go to checkout. And how are you going to pay for this? I don't have a deposit account. That's for people that are doing this like daily or weekly, like a newspaper, magazines, Disney, you know, big places like that. I pay by credit card because I don't want them to have all my information. Then you get this screen. Do you want to proceed? Because what it's telling you, you're going to leave the Electronic Copyright Office and go directly to the US Treasury because they want your money directly. So do you want to proceed? Yeah, what else choice do I got? So this will come up. Now you're in pay.gov. I'm going to pay by credit card. I don't want it out of my savings account. This will come up. You guys know how to fill this stuff out. This is what it'll look like. You'll fill it out and then it'll go to this page. Note that you have to authorize the charge or you'll get a notice saying you didn't authorize the charge. Fine. You continue and then it goes back and forth seamlessly pretty much. As soon as you pay, the money will be, before you can finish the registration, my wife gets the notice that the money's been pulled out already, you know, that it's been charged. They are very quick at getting your money. I can't finish the registration before they have my money. So you'll get this screen, payment is successful, it's been submitted. You'll get an email on it also. The next window is this, you're at the finish line now. And you'll see this select files to upload. So you'll click on that and browse to the files. Okay, and here it is. When you do that, you'll see I usually do my Excel sheet first, and my Excel sheet is named the same way as my folder of images and the title to the group. I keep everything consistent. So you start the upload, pretty simple. You'll see that there's a progress bar, and it'll tell you if it's been successfully done. So I start the upload. You'll see there's a progress bar. It'll tell you how fast it's going. It's usually pretty good. There used to be a time limit. At this point with 750 images, if you've made small JPEGs, you have no problem with their, I think it's a 1 hour time limit. And they never told you, but when you timed out, you just started again, you know, the upload. And they would give you as many uploads as you needed in those days. We're all done. I just take a look at it. It's telling me it's been successfully uploaded, and I get an email for each of the uploads. But that can take a little while. So it says it's been successfully uploaded. I can see it's a small file because it's my Excel file. Here's my zip file. I can see how many megs that is. And then over here, which I can't see, it says if you're done, press this button, and that will close out this account. Now, you can keep this open and upload more things later, but the effective date of your registration doesn't happen until you click this button. Once you click that button, your case is closed, and this becomes the effective date of your registration. And then you'll get this claim submission completed, no further action required. You're done. And if you go back to your home screen, you'll see that it comes up in open cases. There it is. That's when it was opened. And that'll also be my completion date when I'm done. That's it. We're done.
Wow.
Actually, that went pretty good.
I think I need a nap after that.
I'll tell you, is once you do it, you know, I can get through this and from start to finish in about a half hour after I've done the getting the files all lined up. But you want to do the files, you want to have that template, you want to fill out the template and have everything like lined up on your computer to start. But that's it. It's except for that title page where you got to copy and paste in from the Excel sheet. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward and simple.
Yeah, I guess the questions, of course, have started on the definition of published and unpublished.
It's really hard. Published is presented to the public. You don't have to have any money exchanged hands, but the general definition is presented to the public. So social media is a question everybody has. Generally speaking, the lawyer I lecture with, Ed Greenberg, says anything you put online, it's published. There's a gray area there, and it depends on if it's a limited group that you're doing it to, or is it going beyond? Is it being shared? Do you have a small group of people, or is it a large group of people? It's a gray area you don't want to argue with lawyers. So putting it online is published. Here's an interesting thing too. If you're a commercial photographer, if you send a portfolio into an ad agency and they show it to more than one person, that's considered published. Even if it didn't go anywhere online, if it didn't go to the public, the fact that it was presented for further distribution is considered published. Now, I'd say about 98% of the things that I put online have been registered. When I go away somewhere on vacation and I come back and you're hot to post things, unless it's something I really don't care about that I shot on my iPhone and I just want to share that I'm somewhere with people, I don't post anything until I've registered it.
Along that line, it used to be the case where I would do a shoot for something that needed to go out somewhat quickly, and the very next day I would register it and have that and have that date. Now with the Supreme Court decision, of course that's kind of moot.
No.
Well,
you're still protected. You're still protected if you do that way. The effective date is the day you registered. All they're saying is you can't walk into a courtroom without the certificate of registration.
okay.
But you want to do exactly what you're doing. And that's what I would do. If I had a commercial job, I would register it immediately after the job, and I'm protected from that date. So that if the client does anything with it, this or that, and puts it up, I'm fully protected. I might have to do an expedited registration or try and get a copy of it quicker by paying the $800. But if I've registered it that way, I'm fully protected from that date. The Supreme Court ruling was simply because the Ninth Circuit in California was allowing you to file a suit if you've applied for the registration, like we just did. And they're saying, okay, with that, you can apply. And the Supreme Court ruling was just trying to get, because different circuits allow different things. So all they were saying is you have to have the certificate in hand to physically go to court, to physically file a suit.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so Anya is asking, do I have to worry about my portfolios? She's a student and she's submitting to school applications. Does she need to register her portfolio?
Yeah, I would suggest it. Technically,
That sounds like the
that
art
would be
director's name.
publishing it. Yeah, same thing. You're presenting it to a group of people for further distribution. It's weird because if you read it, there is a part that says that a simple display does not constitute publication. What that means exactly, I'm not sure. But the other part of it says if you present it for further distribution, that's considered published.
So Melissa's asking, what are your thoughts on doing this as a portrait photographer? She's never had anyone stealing her portrait work.
My recommendation is to still register all your stuff because you don't know what happens to that person. I just had something recently where I licensed some pictures of a family member because it suddenly became newsworthy on a national thing. Before I sent it anywhere, because it was being requested specifically by a group, I made sure that I had it registered. I spent that afternoon registering just those particular images because I thought they were images that would never mean anything. They were just, and we have a lot of instances like that. We have one where we talk about it in our book, Britney Spears' first husband, who she married for, I think, 40 days or something. When that story came out, there was a guy in Louisiana who had these portrait pictures of him, and they weren't, and he'll even admit they weren't great pictures, but they were in demand. They were being shown everywhere, and he ended up suing a lot of news agencies for using that picture. And it was a nothing picture. You just don't know. You don't know when somebody suddenly does something and becomes famous. Like the guy in Atlanta who just killed those 8 people. If you had a portrait of him from high school or this or that, it's now a newsworthy image. You'd want to have that registered. So, it's $55.
Yeah.
It is, a consideration, but you never
So
know.
what if something, let's say I took a photo 5 years ago and then somebody does some copyright infringement. Is it too late after the fact to register that image?
No, not at all. But you do lose certain things. You cannot recover your lawyer fees, which usually is a problem because that usually scares people more than what you're going to collect is the lawyer fees, because that's what can really run up. But you also lose statutory damages. You can only collect compensatory damages, meaning you can only get actual damages. You have to show what you normally would get for that, and they'll increase that, but you're not going to get a huge amount most of the time. Now I say that, and my lawyer just had a case where it was done after the fact, after the infringement, and because they could prove actual damages, it actually ran up into 6 figures. So always talk to a lawyer, but you're better off getting it registered before the infringement. But if it's done after the infringement, don't just say, oh, I can't do anything. Go talk to a lawyer, still register the images, because if they use it again after you've done it, which does happen, then you're starting at ground zero.
Okay, you were
So-
saying that you have to walk into court with that certificate, but you said it
Right.
could take up to a year. Is that what I heard
Yeah.
now? COVID?
Um,
So you just have to hold off on a
Well,
lawsuit.
it's probably less, but it's not unusual. Right now, it's probably in about a 4 to 5 month time frame to get it. I'm taking a guess. It depends on whose desk it shows up on and what their workload is. And do they suddenly get a big, because these are individual inspectors going over these. And if they suddenly got something on their desk, which is a huge amount from, Disney or something, or, something like that, you may be a little bit further down the pile, or it lands on somebody's desk who doesn't have a lot and they just cleared something, you may get it in 2 months. There's no rhyme or reason to it. But if you're going to litigate, you can do the expedited and you'll get it. They're saying generally about 2 weeks. They say about 14 days, but it could be up to 30 days. And my lawyer did one. He was in Washington. He walked into the copyright office and they gave it to him as he waited.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I just saw a question come in on Facebook asking Jack if you've ever had a registration used against someone. Have you used your registration against someone?
well, the question is, have I ever sued anybody for infringement? Yes, several times. Paid for my Prius in cash. It's my first Prius. I'm on my second Prius now. It's I've and it's required. It's the worst thing to do is to somebody infringes. The worst thing for you is for you to write a letter to somebody, because one, they'll ignore it. Two, the one thing I see online and social media, you get the worst advice. If you tell people somebody infringed it, they tell you, oh, send them an invoice. Send it for 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. That's the worst thing you can do, is send in an invoice. Because what's going to happen if suddenly you find out that it's even bigger than you thought, and you go to a lawyer and the lawyer sues and he says, oh, this is worth $50,000, $60,000, which isn't unusual. And you end up in court, the other side's going to say, but we got this letter where they sent us an invoice for a couple $100 or for $2,000. Why are they suing us for $50,000 now? And the judge's going to take that into account. So do never send an invoice. Talk to a lawyer. And a lawyer shouldn't. You should always find an intellectual property lawyer, someone in your area, somebody who's done this type of work before. Is preferable, because if they haven't done copyright for photographs, they may not be aware of some of the things. I found that out when I was an expert witness on a very, very large case. They had an IP firm, but they did movies because it was in California. And I started asking for paperwork they didn't have because they weren't aware of it. They were having a hard time with the case. The photographer ended up going to another law firm, and it ended up getting resolved very quickly. So you want to get a lawyer who's familiar with it, and they shouldn't charge you just to find out, do you have a case? For you to walk in and saying, this is what I got, is this anything? And then they should advise you, this isn't worth pursuing, or definitely this is something worth pursuing.
So Carol's asking, if you say upload the Excel file, is that the template? When you check the template, is it downloaded to your computer to add to the data? And then you upload your zip at the end?
Right. You resave that. The template I showed you at the beginning, where to get from the Copyright Office. It's hidden pretty much. You got to click that link. You'll download it, you'll save it because you're going to need it over and over again. But then when I fill it out, I do save as the title of that collection that I'm doing. And then yes, at the end, I upload that saved Excel sheet that I filled out. So you fill it out, rename it, and then that's what you upload.
Daniel, I'll get to yours in a minute. I just want to get some of these other ones out. Cheryl's asking, if you register a photo and then have it retouched by a retoucher, is this considered the same photo that was originally registered?
Yeah, we went over this in detail, and I showed examples in the last time I was here. John, if you put up the link for the last discussion, I go really deeper into copyright there, and that's a derivative, unless it's unrecognizable, where an average person can't hold one next to the other and saying, oh yeah, this was derived from that. then you might want to re-register it. But I register just the raw stuff immediately, and yeah, I'll do a lot of editing on it, and manipulation and putting in textures. I consider that still being the original. I own the derivative, the copyright derivatives, and so that's just a derivative of my original. So I'm covered. So generally, you don't have to re-register unless you've really done something where it's just unrecognizable.
So can someone hypothetically bring someone to court in a foreign country with the US registration?
It depends on where the infringement is. You have to talk to a lawyer about that. I had one of my former students was in Egypt. She ended up suing a Korean company because the work ended up on the internet here in the US, and she was able to bring them to court. You know, a lot of companies are international. If it's somebody, you know, in Ukraine or in, you know, one of the stands, odds are you're not going to have any luck doing that. But it all depends. But yeah, depending on where it's shown, or is it an international company and has a footprint here in the U.S. It's the answer to that is that lawyer's favorite term. It depends.
Yeah. What about the Bernie Sanders meme? So do you have any thoughts on that one, that in the chair at the inauguration that everyone made memes out of?
That's an interesting question. You know, technically he could sue on that. Depending
That was
on who
Brendan
uses it.
Smialowski was the photographer on that.
Right. Well, here's the question. Is he an independent photographer, or is he a full-time photographer for AP or UPI or anything like that? Then it comes into a question of, if he doesn't own the copyright, there's nothing he can do. And that comes up with some famous pictures like, boy, again, I'm terrible on name these days, and it's somebody who I know very well, but the famous picture of the Vietnamese prisoner being executed in the street.
Yeah. I know who you
mean.
mean.
You know, I could see his face,
Mhm.
and I know his wife, Alyssa. I can't think of his name, but anyway, it's you know, extremely famous picture.
Eddie Adams.
He was full-time photographer. Eddie Adams, thank you. Eddie Adams couldn't sue anybody over that picture because he doesn't own it. He took it, but the copyright owner was his employer. And in that case, that's also, we've gone over this on the Marlboro pictures that, you know, are being ripped off forever by what's his name, the artist.
Yeah.
A lot of photographers sold their copyright when they worked for Marlboro, so they can't sue on that thing. So it depends on the owner of the image.
So when your
Bernie
Lightroom
Sanders meme, now the Bernie Sanders meme, if people are just using it as a meme, you're not going to collect from somebody, you know, just putting it up on their website. But if somebody used it commercially, and it looked like there were a few, it was available for licensing. And Bernie, I believe, licensed it because he was selling it on T-shirts and other paraphernalia, on mugs. I will bet you dollars to donuts that they went to, I think Getty had it, because we showed that on one of our presentations, that Getty had that image up for licensing. So you could license it as Bernie did to put it on T-shirts, because even though it was a picture of Bernie, Bernie had no rights to it. It wasn't his photograph.
What about the monkey?
We're not going to go into that one right now.
So do you put anything in your photographic metadata to indicate that it was registered, like the case number or something in your Lightroom or whatever catalog?
Nope, I just put down that it's copyrighted. And I fill out all the IPTC information on how to contact me. You know, I put copyright Jack Reznicki, all rights reserved. And I have specific language in my metadata, especially when it goes out to different places. And then I always, for social media, I put on a watermark. And we've gone over that. There's a watermark is no protection in copyright, but if anybody removes it, it's a DMCA violation. It's a violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Yeah,
It
that
also,
goes
for
to,
copyright, it shows willful infringement, which then can bring up the amount that you're going to collect quite a bit.
yeah, that goes to Daniel's earlier question in the chat. It was a kind of long one. One more before that, if Daniel, over on Facebook, someone's asking, can you register composite photographs that include iconic images? For example, if I created a composite image with the SS Enterprise that I didn't take, can I copyright and register the composite? What if I took the photo of the SS Enterprise myself?
You're getting into a complicated thing here, because the Enterprise, pictures of the Enterprise, if you've gotten them from the government, are public domain. And you can do that with a public domain picture. You may have to put in the notes. Remember when we did the registration, there was a notes in there. You'd have to say a note that you're using a public domain image. Now, if it's somebody else's image, or it's say graffiti, you're going to have a problem, because you can't, because that's somebody else's artwork. They own it, and you can't combine it in with your picture unless you get permission from that person. And you have to tell the Copyright Office that there's a previously registered image incorporated in your image. It gets complicated that way, but public domain images that you get like from NASA, or if it's a government image and you know that it's public domain, you shouldn't have a problem. And if you take a picture of it, no problem. But there are issues with things that if there's other intellectual property in your images, there could be issues. My point is, you're always safe to just register everything you can and let the courts fight it out later.
Yeah. So here's Daniel's thing. I've always thought that recourse through copyright infringement was usually complex, slow, and required a lot of upfront work with registering, record keeping, and fraught with legal complexities, requiring a lawyer. Unless the photographer was established with a high yielding portfolio, the recovery probably wouldn't justify the expense and effort. However, if a watermark is altered or removed, it's much easier to use DMCA, and often up to $25,000 with no need to prove loss of income and little need for attorney. Would this be a better course to follow?
No. Yes, it's a course you can follow, but you're being scared away about the cost of litigation. 99, and listen to this number, 99% of copyright infringements are settled. They don't go to court. Nobody wants to go to court. It is expensive, but you can, the one suit I had, we went right up to picking a jury. Just before we picked a jury, the other side came in with a settlement that we could accept. That's usually the case, and the courts are going to try and get these things settled beforehand. It's not as expensive as you think, and it depends on the amount of the case. Photographers are scared to talk to lawyers. And we've heard this over and over again. There was one quote we had from a photojournalist who covered wars, and said at one point he'd rather be in a foxhole with bullets passing over his head than talk to a lawyer. And then he finally got involved with the lawyer. You need to establish a relationship with a lawyer. And you'll find out that if you have something, a lot of photographers have walked away from cases that are worth $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, which is not a huge amount of money in copyright cases. And nobody's going to go to court over that, even the other side, because the lawyer fees are going to be too much. So you'll come up with a settlement. You know, I would be scared away if somebody infringed your work. Talk to a lawyer first. They might tell you, this isn't worth it. And then you can pursue what you're saying. But Digital Millennium Copyright Act action is just as difficult, if not more so, than sometimes just a straight copyright infringement case.
Yeah, I've actually found lawyers' fees very expensive. I've been paying them for 42 years, ever since I married her.
Very good.
So Jack,
that's
one
a
quick
horrible
question.
fee.
Jack, one quick follow-up, if I may, on that. Would you give the same advice to somebody who is not a commercial photographer and therefore is not being harmed financially? But
absolutely, you don't have to be harmed financially. It's you have an exclusive right. And this is the reason that you register before the infringement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in that case, if you've been infringed, unless it's a unique situation and they've put it on like boxes and T-shirts and other things where you can show actual damages to you, or that they're making that much money, there's statutory damages, meaning that if they took one of your pictures and they removed your copyright and they used it commercially for something, and you sue them and it's been registered before the infringement, you're entitled to statutory damages. And if it shows willful infringement, you could collect $150,000 per infringement, up to, and that's up to the court's discretion. Odds are they'll probably bring it down to something a little less, but you can collect $60,000, $75,000 on something like that, and you don't have to show any loss of income.
Okay,
Loss of income helps your case, but it isn't necessary for statutory damages. It's necessary for compensatory damages. But if you've registered before, you can elect to just go after statutory damages.
Thank you.
So with a composite image, should someone register the composite or register the individual images that make up the composite, or all of the above?
If you do the pictures individually, then you're covered in the composite because all the elements are your images. But if you don't want to do that for whatever reason, then just do the composite and you're covered, but you're not covered for the individual images. You're covered for the composite image. So I'd rather do the individuals. And when you can do 750 at a time, I would just include them, your
So,
choice.
do you have suggestions of ways to easily determine if your images are being used by others?
No, Google Images, you can search that way, and tineye.com,
Tineye.
tineye.com. Be very careful of these services. I know that my old association, PPA, just signed on Pixie. I'm not a big fan of Pixie. These search engines that do it for you will take 50% of any settlement or any judgment that you get, 50%, on top of the lawyer fees. There was somebody in Australia that used them, and they said, oh, after we sued and we got this award, we only collected this amount. And I looked at it and I said, that's 15%. And what it was is they used somebody like Pixie, which they didn't talk about. The lawyer got 35%, and they ended up with 15%. They got less than the lawyer, less than the search company. And 50% is a lot. Lawyers will, if you can get a lawyer to do it on contingency, lawyers, except for one troll here in New York who's been suspended by the bar, lawyers will generally be in about the 30-35% range. 50% is considered extreme. So I'm not a fan of those search engines. And by the way, if you use somebody like Pixie and they use non-lawyers to contact people, which is a little questionable, and then you decide, I'm not going to use you. You found it, but I'm going to use my own lawyer. They're still entitled to their 50%. When you read the fine print, and there's more than just Pixie, and all of them seem to be based out of Germany for some reason. I don't know why. When you look at these companies, you'll see that they're basically either all the executives or the company itself is registered in Germany.
So Daniel's saying all rights reserved is no longer a part of the U.S. copyright notices. Is there any advantage to including that phrase?
It's never been part of the U.S. It was required for South America. But we've always used it, and there's no harm in doing it. You're just letting people know that you're reserving all the rights to it. I will use that term sometimes, but South America used to be required that you have the copyright year, your name, and then in all caps saying all rights reserved. That hasn't been needed for a long time.
And do you still need the actual copyright symbol in there?
No, you could say copyright. There's no legal requirement for the notice, but the way that they prefer you to do it is either the word copyright or the circle C, the year and your name. When I post things like on social media or something else, and it's an older picture or I don't want it to be dated, I leave the date out. I just put copyright symbol in my name. There's no protection.
Yeah. Is there some place to go to find lawyers or that handle this stuff, or is there a reference?
Um, Not really. You got to be a little careful. You got to ask around. We suggest do not call your local bar association. They're going to give you a lawyer who needs work. Um, we suggest you're better off finding a local law school, finding out who handles intellectual property, and ask the professor, does he know anybody? And if it's an interesting case, maybe he'll get the class involved. But I think going to a university, but otherwise ask online. Do not discuss any copyright infringement specifics on social media. It will come back to haunt you. It is discoverable. Even if you remove it later, lawyers can find it. Just because you take it down doesn't mean it can't be found. It's very easy using something called Wayback Machine, wayback.com, and they use it all the time. Ask around. Go up, say, I have a copyright infringement. Can anybody recommend a lawyer? And then look up the lawyer. There's a couple copyright trolls, and you want to avoid them. I could do a whole show on that, and I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
But do some research and ask around.
So from Facebook, I got a question about appropriation being legal or not. For example, if she took a line drawing off the internet, colorized it, did other things to it, can she consider the image her own? What about the guy who took photo of images from Instagram? What did the court rule that was okay?
He was sued. He was sued by one photographer who registered the work and sued him. No, appropriation is not acceptable, no matter what you keep reading on the art things, no matter, there's no percentage change. There's no, you change 3 things and it's something new. No, the test is if you hold up one and hold up the other and you see one was derived from the other, that's an infringement. The reason Richard Prince on that Instagram thing wasn't sued is because most of the people didn't know how to sue him. First of all, their work wasn't registered. And 2, they thought they could shame him into paying, which he's never going to do. And people just simply didn't take him to court. He's been sued. He's lost. Actually, Jeff Koons just lost 2 cases in France on appropriation art. And he changed one of them quite a bit. If you go to our last B&H event space that I did with Ed Greenberg, we go over those 2 cases with Jeff Koons. Appropriation is not legally accepted. There's nothing you can do to suddenly make it a new work. The best thing, create your own work.
Mm-hmm. So Jeff typed into the chat, notice of copyright before March 1, 1989. The use of copyright notice was mandatory in all published works, and any work first published before that date would have carried the notice. For works published on or after March 1, 1989, use of copyright notice is optional.
Yeah, I believe he's correct on that, but I thought it was the 1978, the 1976 law that was effective 1978.
That's a copy and paste from the Copyright Office website.
Then I would say that you're accurate on that. I knew that there wasn't an 89 change, but I couldn't remember what that was. The 78 was just that you own the copyright when you took the picture. But as far as the notice, you're probably right that it's the 89 date. That before that, it had to be on if it's published. And that screwed up a lot of people who were trying to register older images from the 70s if they've been published. There's somebody I know that I was helping out who was doing it from a weekly music rag sheet, basically, and he couldn't find them, and he had to find them or buy them online to show the Copyright Office that there was a copyright notice in the newspaper to cover him that there was a copyright notice. It didn't have to appear with his picture, but it had to be at least in the newspaper to be a notice. Without that, they wouldn't register as images.
So are there pros and cons to putting the date in your copyright notice?
No.
Okay.
The only con is it dates the picture if it's going to be on for a long time.
Yeah, and John Shields was asking, what do you do with the small JPEGs that you submitted when you're registered? Do you keep them in your Lightroom catalog, or do you keep a separate folder for registered images? I guess it comes back to
a separate folder. It's a good
tracking
it's Yeah, I would highly suggest that you keep it, a folder with that name. And then what I do is I append the registration number when I get the certificate at the end of that file, just so I have it. The reason you want to keep track of it is if you sue somebody, the lawyers might ask you for all the images in that registration. And if you don't have it accurately, you're in trouble. And if you have to get it from the Copyright Office, it's very expensive and time consuming. They will pull it out. Hopefully they still have it. They haven't thrown it out. But to get a copy of what you've submitted to them is expensive. I just keep it uploaded. Quite honestly, I keep it uploaded in the cloud, and I keep it in a hard drive. But I have quite a few. I have a lot of registrations. So I just keep every registration I've done in its own folder.
Great. Is there anyone else have questions right now?
I can make a couple of comments to what Jack has said from personal experience. When I was shooting bodybuilding competitions on assignment, I was photographing maybe 10,000 people a year. And I had a couple of bodybuilders that gave me the benefit of going out and murdering somebody. And it was very gracious. And that whole shoot was indeed registered. And it paid off handsomely. I've had many other bodybuilders go on to do something disreputable that has also gone into the news and has been worthwhile for me. In regards to the Ukraine, I've had instances in Ukraine where I have had images licensed for billboards and all kinds of things. And what I've done up ahead of time on that is very simply charge them a lot of money up front, fully expecting I was going to be infringed. I had another case where I was infringed in India, where it was very substantial. And what we did there is we discovered the guy had a business in a home in New Jersey, so that gave us jurisdiction. So all these things do happen.
Yeah. And you can collect a lot on that. But that was good stuff.
Michael?
Good to hear.
If you have a lot of images that were published but not copyrighted,
Not registered.
not registered, but an awful lot of pictures that were never registered, but you can't figure out where those published pictures were actually published. Isn't it easier just to say, okay, you start fresh and take all those published pictures and say, nah, we'll start it from today and call them unpublished?
Let me put it this way, and just read between the lines, Mr. Newler. I can't advise you, that's right, I can't advise you to do something that's illegal.
How is that
But sometimes
illegal?
you have to make business decisions on your own.
Mhm.
I'm being recorded here, so that's as much as I'm going to answer that question.
But is that illegal for who? For me? Or the people that did it before?
Michael, give me a call. Give me a call. Yeah,
Telephones still work.
Technically,
that's right.
On your registration, you're stating that something is not published and it was published, and you're committing perjury on a government document.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Exactly.
If it went to court, you would suffer.
And we don't want to see Michael suffer.
If it's discoverable, you know, it's.
You mean
let me give you another example. Let me give you another example. Hold on, Michael. Pull back a little bit. Hit the mute button for a minute,
Okay.
please, or for an hour. There's something called orphan works, and the example we always give is years ago, if your parents, or now it might be you, are going to have your 50th anniversary, and the kids want to throw a big party, and they want to do a big blow up of your wedding picture from when you got married 50 years ago. Now, the photographer died. The studio is out of business. You can't find the heirs of the business or of the photographer. It is now considered an orphan work. You can't locate the copyright owner. Technically, you cannot blow up that picture. But, and this is the but, I would probably go send it to a lab and blow it up, because the question I have in mind is, who's going to come to sue me? It's a business decision. If somebody does come up out of the woodwork and decides to sue me, I'm in trouble, and I'm going to have to write somebody a big check. What are the odds? And as a business person, I've done things through the years that may not be completely kosher, but I do it with my eyes open, knowing that I could be sued, and be willing to, that I might have to fork something over. But I look at those things very hard, and I look at the considerations. There's things I would never try to attempt to do, but there are things that come up once in a while that I have done that are probably in a gray area. That's the best I can tell you.
Okay.
Next question.
I do have one question about publication dates. I do portraits of new Eagle Scouts and then send the very, very tightly cropped headshots to the newspaper for publication. The newspaper is not as quite as good about publishing these things on a timely basis, and sometimes they've showed up as late as 18 months later. Can I put the publication date as the date I send it to the newspaper and not the date they publish it?
Yeah, absolutely, because you're presenting it for further distribution. Just because they've sat on it doesn't make it unpublished. I would use the date you sent it, you know.
Okay.
I would actually copyright it as unpublished before you send it.
Yeah.
Well, I can't do that now. I've taken about 1,000 of these things. but in the future, and one of the things, as I say to the parents as they're trying to figure out which photo to choose, is I say, you know, you're going to want to use this photo sometime in the future when your son is running for the presidency. I don't tell them I'm going to charge them a lot of money when they want to do that.
Yeah, but if suddenly you find out one of the pictures that you haven't registered, the guy went out and suddenly robbed a whole bunch of banks or something, I would then immediately find that image and register it then and there.
Well, after this discussion, I'm going to register them all.
But who's going out doing portraits of all these future criminals and murderers? Stephen, you are? Okay.
My wife is.
Yeah. My wife was running craft camps for little girls. She's been an elementary school teacher, and all these little girls love her, and they love coming over to the house to do all that. So when I was learning to shoot headshots, I practiced on all these kids and then on their parents and all that. And so just recently, I read an article about the .crypto accounts with, you know, all this stuff. So I thought, well, I should register for $40. I should register StephenGutz.crypto because I have StephenGutz.com and other things. So my wife said, why? I said, well, maybe I'll sell one of these photos one day. And they said, why? Well, you know, some of these kids were really smart. They could end up being, you know, Secretary of State, President, you know, a mass murderer, whatever. And so we just had that conversation, and yeah, I registered them because why not?
Yeah, when I say this to the Eagle Scout parents, it's only half a joke. I mean, these are Eagle Scouts. Most of these kids are going to end up in fairly significant positions.
Well, so many of our presidents have been Eagle Scouts. I did Eagle Scouts
only one.
too.
Well,
only one.
Wait, no, Ford and more. I thought.
That doesn't matter for our discussion here, though.
Yeah, I will tell you, one of the things I try and tell people about registration is when I'm in a large group, I ask how many people insure their cameras, you know, and everybody's hand goes up. And I said, well, copyright registration is insurance for your images. And that's the way I look at it. To me, it was when I was a commercial photographer, just the cost of doing business.
No, it's not insurance. It's our annuity. copyright on our images is an annuity for our future.
Well, it's
No?
also insurance on protecting your images. It's an annuity if you can collect money on it. It's insurance to make sure that you're not getting ripped off.
More like a
So
lottery ticket, hoping to get lucky.
I know a lot of people who've been extremely active looking, for their images online, through Google Images and other stuff.
God bless Peter. God bless Peter B. Kaplan.
Oh,
I
I don't know. He would
my
sue
most-
for anything.
Yeah,
I was always scared when he called me because it was like I had to be real careful because I didn't want to get sued by Peter.
exactly.
Right.
I got another question come in. What is the copyright date? Is it the date it was taken, registered with the Copyright Office, or published?
If it's unpublished, it's the date that you took it. If it's published, it's the date of publication.
Okay.
But if you have an old image like you shot unpublished, it could be the date of the registration. So pictures I took in the 70s, if I wanted an official copyright registration, like the ones that I just did yesterday, the official one would be for a picture I took in the 70s, copyright 2021, Jack Reznicki.
Okay. Super simple. One of the
Simple.
I don't think I have enough
Okay.
time. I don't think I have enough left in my life to do all this work for the images that I need to register.
Well, do the important ones.
Yeah. Julie's bringing up the NFT, non-fungible tokens. Do you have anything to say about these new?
It's
new
so
world?
early. The only thing I would say is that one image, which was incredible, that sold for the 69 million. Note that the person who bought it has a business doing NFTs. So it's sort of like an art
It's a
gallery
business
buying its
expense.
own pictures to raise up the price.
Did you actually
Yeah.
see the pictures that are in that composite?
I couldn't see them individually. I sort of had an idea.
Somebody posted it online, and it's the worst bunch of stuff. And a lot of these images are Facebook would ask for Band-Aids.
Yeah. Well, it's just like his life collection of images. God bless him that he got that, and that's terrific. I just think it's way too early for NFTs to really know what it's going to do. I mean, I hope it does progress to something, but it's the concept that you own the original, but people can make as many copies that are just as good as the original. I just don't. I don't get the concept. I understand it. I just don't know if it has legs, if it's going to continue or not. Right now, the people that seem to be doing it are the people who want to promote it. So let's see.
It just seems like spending $40 to reserve a domain. Why not?
Oh, well, that's something different. I mean, that, but NFTs, I just don't know. That's beyond my pay grade.
Yeah, I
right
guess the
now.
people charging the gas fees and the other transaction things are the ones making the money right now.
Yeah.
You know what? I equated this thing to when you have a very famous piece of art. Oh, at the carnet. You know what I mean by a carnet? It's a paper
it's an
that
import.
follows the artwork. Okay. This particular token, all right, supposedly is going to supersede the carnet. So if in fact you have an image that you're only going to make 18 of, you would get 18 tokens. Each one would be numbered from 1 to 18. So theoretically, that would prevent somebody from making copies and calling it 1920 and or 30.
No, it'll prevent somebody from saying it was one of the numbered ones.
That's right.
Because it'll show who the owner is, but you could still make copies of it. You can. It's like buying a like the Mona Lisa. The Louvre has it.
Right.
You could buy copies of it. You could hire people to make Well, it's
But that's not an
copyright.
original.
Right. It's who owns the original. That's what an NFT is.
Right.
You own the original, and is that enough to spend that kind of money? If you're satisfied with just a copy of it, you don't need an NFT.
Well, but if
of
you have a picture that you're only making 18 of, all right, aren't each one of the 18 theoretically an original?
No, because you couldn't do it because that's digital. How do you say it's a number 2 in a digital copy? Either you own the original, there'll only be one. In digital, there'd only be one original, because any of the copies are just digital copies. If you make a print, that's a different story. In a print, you could number and it could be in the numbered edition. Somebody could make more copies from the negative, but they're not part of the numbered edition. But with NFTs, I don't think you can do what you just said, Michael. It can prove who owns the original file of it, but copies are copies.
Like I said
That's the part that
yeah,
I
didn't
haven't
get it either.
figured out
But
the
that-
value.
what's coming out is that the whole thing was basically a marketing event.
John, I got an idea. Let's make note of this NFT and revisit it in 10 years.
Sounds good.
Right.
Sounds good.
That's a
Right.
great idea.
Great, but we can come back here on Monday, though, with Don Komarechka, who does science experiments and macro photography. So if there's no more questions for today, I'm gonna let Jack go. I know he's been busy preparing this. And Thursday's a busy day for him. He's got to get in the car.
No,
Oh.
no, we don't go until Monday. Monday, we'll be heading up to the Berkshires unless something
Okay.
else comes up. But next Thursday,
Oh,
I
Pesach.
will be up there.
Pesach.
One more question popped in,
That's
though.
right.
If you have a provenance of the photograph, can you register it as yours?
No. You own the physical photo. Doesn't mean that you have the underlying copyright. Same issues they had with the guy who bought all the Vivian Mayer negatives. He ran into a problem because he doesn't own the copyright. He owned the physical negatives. Owning the physical thing does not give you intellectual property rights to it.
Right.
So if you bought an original numbered edition of a print, you can't make you can't copyright it. You don't own the intellectual property.
And I saw one more on Facebook. Do you register every single photo you take, or just the ones you post, process, and finalize?
I try and register as much as I can, even before I work on them.
Mhm.
The problem is, in the old days, before they changed it, I think 2 years ago, they changed it in February of recent years, where it used to be I'd go on a trip and I'd come back with 10, 12,000 images. I would register them all on one registration. There was no problem. Then they lit them to 750. So now if I come back from a trip like that, I have to edit down my images. But I try and register before I really work on them,
Mhm.
because it could take me a year to work on a particular file.
Sure.
So I try and register as much as I can, as fast as I can.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Let's close
Jack,
down
thanks
the
a lot.
Thank you,
Facebook.
Jack.
My
I'm
pleasure.
gonna call you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Okay,
Fuck you,
please call
Norbert.
me.
Thank you.
All righty.
Good to see you,
Oh,
man.
we started
Okay,
and ended the same
now
way. All right.